Hello and welcome to another monthly update live stream for the Digital Tolkien Project. I'm James Tauber and I've just got it under the wire in terms of getting an update live stream happening in the month of November. One of the reasons why this one was a little later was obviously Thanksgiving in the US, but also a birthday trip that I made, and prior to that a little trip that I took that I want to briefly talk about, which was to the lovely city of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, location of Marquette University. And the reason I was there was to visit the Tolkien archives, which are at the John Rayner Library, Memorial Libraries at Marquette University. And in the Special Collections and University Archives are the manuscripts for Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Farmer Giles of Ham, and Mr. Bliss. And I spent a couple of days there, spending most of my time in front of a screen like you see on the left. That's John Garth on the right, who was there at the same time. I deliberately timed my visit to be there with John. And these screens are the main way that you now access the archives, certainly for the manuscripts of Lord of the Rings. This is a system called Anduin that some of you may have heard about, built by Eric Muller-Harder. And it lets you access scanned images of the Lord of the Rings manuscript in a way that is tied to the information about what parts of Lord of the Rings it's corresponding to, and so on. So a lot of work was done by John Ratliff over a number of years to try to piece together what manuscripts in what folders in what box files go with what parts of Lord of the Rings, and that information is gradually being worked into this Anduin system. Now, I was there really just to, I didn't have particular research questions. I was just wanting to see what it was like to go through the Lord of the Rings manuscript. In hindsight, I actually wish that I'd thought about this a little more in advance. In my History of Middle-earth class, we've just started Volume 12, The Peoples of Middle-earth, which of course covers the appendices in Lord of the Rings, and it would have been, I wish I'd thought about focusing on looking at those while I was there, because there's lots of really interesting things in Peoples of Middle-earth that would have been fun to correlate to manuscripts. But just to, sorry, I was just going to answer Nerdistry's question about, are regular people like you able to go to? No, you can visit it. You need to have an arrangement with Bill Fliss, the archivist there, but it's certainly possible. You basically, the procedure is you get a visitor's pass to the library, you go in, you get an account on the Anduin system, and then you can only use it from within this reading room if you want to see the actual images of the manuscript. But it's all possible for anyone to go visit if you can make it to Marquette. Just contact Bill Fliss, the Tolkien archivist there. And hello everyone else, Tom, Sarah, Trotter, Maureen. Wonderful to see you all in the channel. I have in front of me, you'll see one of the volumes of the History of Middle-earth. Actually, it's the combined volumes 6 through 9, which cover Lord of the Rings. It's actually really one of the things that really struck me looking at the manuscripts while looking at the History of Middle-earth is just how little appreciation you have reading Christopher's description of what's actually going on the page. So Christopher would just say something like, there's a marginal note here, or my father wrote this and then crossed it out, or halfway down the page, there's a new section that talks about this. It's a whole different experience actually looking at the manuscripts, and it was a lot of fun. The other thing that I did, which Trotter alluded to, was there and I'll say a little bit more about the letters in a moment when I talk about book acquisitions, but the new edition. There are still many letters that we know of from Tolkien that are not even in the new revised version of the letters, and they are being meticulously catalogued by the Tolkien Collector's Guide, and I definitely suggest you check out the Tolkien Letters guide that they're putting together. They have a lot of metadata about letters that we don't necessarily have the access to the contents of yet, if they're known. They also have the contents of some letters that aren't necessarily published in the revised edition. But there are a couple that were known to be at Marquette whose content was unknown. And so one of the things that I did while I was at Marquette was ask Bill Fliss to take a look at the letters. Now, the way the letters work, they're a little different than the Lord of the Rings manuscripts. They have not been digitized on a computer, but they have been photocopied. So when I got the file box with the folders, they were photocopies of the letters, not the actual letters themselves. Obviously, from a preservation point of view, you don't want to be handing out the actual manuscripts. And certainly in the case of the Lord of the Rings manuscripts, I don't think many people are ever going to see them again. There was the exhibit, but after that, they're for preservation purposes locked away, and access is through in the sort of digital surrogates in the case of the Lord of the Rings manuscripts, and still photocopies in the case of the letters. So that was fun to do that. So I will. Somebody could post a link maybe to the Tolkien Collector's Guide. Trot, if you want to send a link to the letters guide, or somebody else can for Nerdistry. So Carl, the fun thing about, I know there was a discussion on Facebook trying to work out exactly what I was looking at. The trick is that what's on the screen is not the same as what I've got open in History of Middle-earth. I was looking at one thing in the History of Middle-earth and another thing on the screen. I can't work out exactly which one was which, but I was certainly spending a lot of time at the epilogue. And so you were quite right to work that out. Okay. Hi, Hannah, by the way, and Carl. Let me continue on. I want to talk about a bunch of stuff that we've been working on besides just my trip to Marquette. One of the things that I do want to briefly talk about, I'll just bring myself back, is some work that's being done annotating The Hobbit. Now, this is work that I started a long time ago, and my Mythmoot talk 2 years ago included this sort of information. But one of the things that I have been working on is basically a scene segmentation of The Hobbit. There's been some work that I've done with Hannah MacDonald on Lord of the Rings as well that I'll come back to, but at the moment I'm trying to do the next level of detail of scene segmentation around The Hobbit. And that involves a couple of things. One, it involves annotating, as you can see here, what parts of the text are actually telling the story versus are giving background information. Actually, the very first video that I did on this channel, live video as opposed to a live stream, pre-recorded video as opposed to a live stream that I did on this channel had to do with some of these notions. The fact that at the start of The Hobbit, it's not until the 6th paragraph that the story actually begins. The rest of it's background information. And for a bunch of sort of linguistic and stylistic analysis that I'm doing across the works of Tolkien, it's very helpful to separate what's the actual mainline narrative of the story, what's background information, what's narratorial intrusion. And so I've been going through and manually annotating that. There are some tricks to partly automating some of this. For example, if there's use of first and second person pronouns or present tense verbs in the narrative, that's a sign of a narratorial intrusion. But to help refine some of those techniques, I've been doing this manually. Another thing I've been doing, which is something I had done partly a number of years ago, is marking up all of the references to time. Because one of the things that I want to do is annotate exactly when days change. So you can work out for any point in the text exactly what day it is. To a certain extent, this has been done in at sort of a rough level, but not kind of at the exact paragraph level. And there's a number of reasons for doing this. One is just from my own point of view, is just sort of the narratological study of when does Tolkien describe things in real time versus sort of in summary. But there's also, this relates to Jordan Rennell's work on the soundtrack, the soundscape that he's building for The Hobbit now, exactly what passages correspond to what time of day and what location and so on. The other thing that I've been working on is exactly who are the characters present, when do they come and go. And this is something that Hannah MacDonald has been helping me on with Lord of the Rings, but I'm now doing it for The Hobbit, so you can see exactly when Bilbo arrives, when each of the individual dwarves arrive, even down to when Bilbo is moving within within Bag End, and so on. So I've only just started this work, but I wanted to share with you just to at least give you a flavour of the kind of thing that I'm working on here. So I'm just reading Trotter saying that he got to actually look at the real letter at London University. That's excellent. The next thing I want to show you is another thing that I've been building. In part, the impetus for this was the classes that I've been teaching on History of Middle-earth, where we're doing a lot of comparison of versions of the text. And I showed in the last video, I showed some stuff that I'd done there. Some of you may recall where I'd sort of counted the number of shared n-grams. Remember, n-grams are contiguous sequences of words. And so if you have a sequence of 5 words that appears in one text and the same sequence of 5 words appears in another text, one reason for that, likely reason for that, is that there's been text reuse. That, you know, it could be a quotation or something, but in the context of of Tolkien and the history of Middle-earth and so on, it's often simply that, you know, that you have an earlier version of the text and then a later version of the text. As you get to longer and longer n-grams, like 7 words in a row, 8 words in a row, 9 words in a row, it's really starting to get into true copying of the text, but then you lose times where there's been a paraphrase or a word changed here or there. When you go too low, like trigrams or 4grams, you sometimes run into issues where it's just a turn of phrase, that it's not text reuse, it's just that there's a turn of phrase that gets used. So anyone who's seen my Mythmoot talk last year, I gave a whole talk about this kind of stuff. But anyway, what I really wanted to continue to explore and build some tools around is to really be able to dive into what parts of what texts map to other, what parts of a later version of the text. In this case, what I have here on the left-hand side is the Grey Annals, and on the right-hand side, the published Silmarillion. And I just want to show you some of the stuff that I've been working on here. So you can scroll down these individually, so you can compare any part of the Grey Annals to any part of the published Silmarillion. But as you scroll down, you end up seeing these bits in green. These are cases where I think this is done on shared 7grams, so contiguous sequences of 7 words that appear not only in the Grey Annals but also in the published Silmarillion. And in fact, in the margin here, you can see exactly what part of the published Silmarillion it corresponds to, and I can click on that and it will scroll to it. So here you can see a passage in the Grey Annals and a passage in the published Silmarillion that share 7grams, and I can hover over them to see the exact n-grams that are being shared. You can see then also some changes that were made. Sometimes it's hard to tell with this approach, because I don't necessarily have all of the emendations that have been made to the original manuscripts, the differences between the Grey Annals in this case, because this is just one version of the Grey Annals with or without certain emendations. You can't necessarily tell if the differences between the Grey Annals and the published Silmarillion are changes that Christopher made while putting together the published Silmarillion, or they were emendations that were subsequently made by his father to the Grey Annals manuscript that were then incorporated. But you can see certain changes. For example, the dropping of the word bays here, the dropping of the word and because a new sentence is formed. That may have been Christopher deciding to shorten the sentence and start a new sentence. You've got a different spelling of Halkaraxa. That's likely Tolkien, Christopher's father, making that change. But you can see, through the whole set of Grey Annals, you can see exactly what phrases, what engrams were used in the published Silmarillion. And this is just the Grey Annals. Obviously, one of the things that would be really nice to be able to do is for any of the source manuscripts for the published Silmarillion to see exactly where in the published Silmarillion they came from. And that's something that I'll continue to work towards. This is one of those things that I wish I could share with people and allow others to use, but of course I can't do that. For copyright reasons, I would dearly love to come to some arrangement with HarperCollins and the Tolkien estate to do something around this. But for now, it's a useful resource, useful research tool for me, and I can certainly help others who are interested in discovering certain things from this. But this is primarily just a prototype to play around with things to get some ideas. Okay. Next thing I want to do is talk a little bit about book acquisitions. And I'll just briefly say something. Of course, the revised and expanded edition of the Tolkien Letters of J.R. Tolkien came out recently, and so I would be remiss of me not to at least show my copies. I did my usual thing of ordering both in the US and in the UK, and so we have both the HarperCollins version and the William Morrow version that differ in the paper that's used. There's a slight difference in thickness. The HarperCollins version from the UK has a ribbon, which the William Morrow does not. But it's wonderful to have these books. And as I mentioned, the Tolkien Collector's Guide has the wonderful database of information about the letters. I'll definitely include a link in the description of this video. But the other thing I want to share is I just got my author's copy of a book that I have a chapter in. Yes, I agree, Trotter. The UK version is better if you have a chance. I ordered mine from Blackwell's. That's where I normally get my UK editions from. Blackwell's will ship free to the US, which makes it worthwhile. And one of the reasons I always go to Blackwell's as well is that they package the books really well. They never come damaged in any way. They take the time and care to properly package them. But anyway, the other book that that arrived was my author's copy of Reading Fictional Languages, published by Edinburgh University Press. And this book is a collection of papers coming out of a symposium that was run at the start of last year at University of Nottingham by Israel Noletto, Jessica Norledge, and Peter Stockwell about conlangs and fictional languages or constructed languages in fiction. And I wrote a chapter about Tolkien's use of invented languages in Lord of the Rings. So the focus was less on the languages themselves and more on the way that Tolkien uses them from a narrative point of view. And, one of the things that I looked at, for example, is just how much or little Tolkien uses invented languages in the text. The impetus of the paper, the chapter, was actually a comic. I should have included the comic here. I'll send a link again in the description. There's a XKCD comic where he basically makes fun of novelists for making up words, and he's particularly poking fun at Neil Stephenson, but he makes a comment in this comic that unless you're Tolkien, you get a limit of 5 made up words. And the point that I wanted to make in this chapter is that it's not like Tolkien makes up words all over the place. In fact, he does not tend to do the thing that a lot of other novelists do of making up new words for everyday items. He's very restrained in that. There are very few words where he uses an Elvish word for, say, a common noun. And they tend to be where he really wants to emphasize that it's a different kind of thing. So he tends to be plants and trees and things like lembas and so on that he'll use an Elvish word for. The rest, outside of the poems and the greetings and stuff like that, it's really just the names of people and places that he uses. The other thing I talk about in that chapter is Tolkien's whole use of sort of analogical translation. The fact that he chooses to use Old English to convey the language of Rohan, even though that's not the language they spoke. It's just there's an analogy between the language, the common speech, and the language of the Rohirrim that corresponds to the relationship between modern day English and Old English, and that's the reason that he does it. And so I talk a bunch about that too. It's an expensive book, so I don't necessarily suggest that anyone go out and buy it. But you could maybe encourage your library to get it. And if anyone's interested, I'm happy to send a electronic copy of my paper. Okay. Enough about book acquisitions. I want to briefly say something about the Tolkien Glossary. Actually, one of the interesting things, if you go to the Tolkien Glossary, you'll see that a bunch of words are tagged as being Sindarin or Quenya or Kuzdul or Entish and so on. That information came from the work that I did for that chapter, actually, which means that these tags are only are limited in scope to those in Lord of the Rings. I still need to go through the process of identifying what are the non-English words in the Silmarillion and the Hobbit and tag those appropriately. That's still something that needs to be done. But the other thing that's going on in the Tolkien Glossary, thanks to Pat Lusk, is it isn't on the live site yet, but we've been working on labeling the Gollumisms, the words of Gollum. And there's 2 things that we're doing there. One is simply tagging the words that are uniquely Gollum words. So you'll be able to click on the tag and get a list of all the Gollumisms. But the other thing is actually translating them to their standard spelling. And one of the reasons I think this is helpful is if you're doing a search for the use of a particular word, you may care when Gollum uses the word, even if Gollum spells it differently or says it differently, and so it's spelled differently in the text. So if you were searching for the word fish or the word master, you would normally miss it if it was spelt in a way to convey the way Gollum speaks. And so one of the things that this data will help do is facilitate searching based on the normal spelling of the word. Okay, that's the Tolkien Glossary. I will share. I will publish the Gollum information shortly. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to do it before this live stream. But thank you very much to Pat Lusk for doing this work. If anyone else is interested in contributing particular taggings of words, it's a great way to contribute to the Digital Tolkien Project. Just ask in the Discord. We have a channel just about the glossary, and if you have any ideas for things that you would like to tag in the text, let me know. Okay, the final thing that I want to talk about, well, sort of final thing. There's one last thing I'll talk about afterwards, but I wanted to just mention something that it's been around for a little while, and I'm hoping to get back to it soon, and that's this Python library that I've called Arda, which is just a collection of tools as I write Python code for dealing with certain things in Tolkien's Legendarium, things that need to be processed a particular way. I contribute this code to this library. So there's two things in Arda at the moment, if you're a Python programmer interested in this sort of stuff. One is some date handling code, and another is the beginnings of some pronunciation and syllabification code. So I'll just show you those briefly, just to give you a sense of what they can do. So the date code, first of all, understands the ages and when the first, second, and third age began and ended. And so you can do date calculations based on that. So if you tell it that a certain event occurred in the second age and another event occurred in the third age, you can do arithmetic to work out how many years passed since then. So for example, you can record when Isildur was born, when Sauron was captured. You can just express it in terms of second age or third age, when Isildur was killed. And then you can do arithmetic like, how old was Isildur when Sauron was captured? Or how old was Isildur when he died, and so on. So it handles all that arithmetic across age boundaries, I guess. Elrond was 3,608 when he married, by the way, and 3,740 when Arwen was born. Arwen was 2,778 years old when she married Aragorn. Aragorn was, of course, 88. So you can do... this is obviously only at a year level, but it will eventually be capable of individual day as well. And to that end, one of the other things that I've done is put in stuff to do with the Shire calendar. And so one of the things it can do is it can convert from how many days into the year is it to what the Hobbit name for that particular day is. So the 50th day of the year is the 19th of Solmarth. The 100th day of the year is the 9th of Astron, and so on. It can also handle leap years, so you can tell it if it's a leap year, then the 50th, the 182nd day, if it's a leap year, is the first of Lythe, and so on. So all that calculation is possible in the date handling code. The last thing is, the second part, is some Elvish pronunciation stuff. So I haven't finished the actual sort of pronunciation side of things, the mapping to things like the International Phonetic Alphabet and so on. But I have implemented the syllabification algorithm. So you can give it a Elvish word and it will syllabify it according to the rules in Appendix E, and which I've talked about in a previous video as well. I've not yet published... Trotter's asking about custom Tolkien dictionaries for spell checking. I have not yet done that. That's on my list of things to do for the Tolkien Glossary. There'll probably be a download or something from the Tolkien Glossary website where you'll be able to get... The idea here is that you're having a list of words that Tolkien uses, so you can just import that into your word processor or whatever, and so all of the Tolkien-related words won't be flagged as misspellings and so on. Not just words that are constructed words, but also constructed language words, but even just alternative spellings that Tolkien uses. Tolkien tends to be Fowlerian in his spellings, which I quite like, which means it sometimes trips up even a British English spell checker, because British English spell checking tends to be a different set of conventions than Fowler proposed and that Tolkien used, the sort of more traditional Oxford spelling. So things like the ISE versus IZE, Tolkien favours the Z rather than the S in a lot of cases, and as does Fowler. So yes, I will definitely do that. Thank you for the reminder, Trotter, actually. That's definitely something that I want to do, because I will find it useful too, and I'm glad to know that you'll find it useful. One final thing I just want to say about this sort of pronunciation generation, it's something that will feed back into the glossary as well. So one of the things that I want to do in the glossary is be able to provide pronunciation guides for words in the so if you're click on a any word, not just Elvish words actually, but any word, I want to provide pronunciation information as well here. And so one of the ways that I can do that is use the relevant part of the Arda library to generate pronunciation guides. People can give me feedback if there's mistakes. But yes, I totally agree, Tom. Fowler rules. Nice pun too. I'm a big fan of Fowler. Have been my whole life. My mum had his Concise Oxford Dictionary when she was in school, and I inherited it. And so I've always favoured that particular spelling. And Fowler had also just very pragmatic, usage-based ideas about the English language as well, and fought against a lot of silly prescriptive grammar. And Tolkien agreed with Fowler about that. It's a topic for a whole nother talk. Well, I've given talks on it before, but a topic for a whole nother YouTube video. Okay, I just want to finish up. So, unless people have questions, to just answer Nerdistry's question. So I will probably provide, one of the nice things about the pronunciation being done on sort of in an automated fashion is that I plan to provide both IPA and also probably the sort of system that's used in other dictionaries. I think that Merriam-Webster has a system that's just different from IPA, and I can produce both. In terms of audio files of somebody saying it, that is something that I would love to do. I could initially do that. I could initially do some text-to-speech from the IPA that would be pretty decent. Having the IPA lets you automate audio quite well. There's no way I would necessarily want to record all 18,000 words that are in the glossary manually. But we could do some manual recordings as well. But certainly that's something that I would like to look in. And yes, Tom, Fowler's usage book's wonderful. Because he's opinionated about things in a very fun and practical way. Oh, hi, Bergond. I should link to them. So that's another thing I want to make sure I do with the Tolkien Glossary is if there are other resources related to a particular word to link to them, not reinvent the wheel. So if there's a way of if there's any information out there sort of at a word level, I really want to feed that into this glossary. So this glossary sort of becomes a starting point for a lot of exploration of Tolkien's words elsewhere. Thanks for that, Bergond. The only final thing I want to say before finishing up is that I had hoped by now, in fact, I think I talked about it 2 or 3 months ago in a video, that my talk at Oxonmoot would be available. A few people after that talk had asked about me sort of having a session where I went into a little bit more detail and answered questions about it and so on. And I'd been putting off doing that until the talk video was available. Now it's been 3 months. I have no idea if the talk video is ever going to be available. I know there are other videos on Oxonmoot, from Oxonmoot, like Jeremy's, that have not appeared either. So I think I will probably just go ahead and at some point arrange some kind of session if people are interested. Maybe I'll do it over Zoom, where people who are interested in a slightly deeper dive into the Oxonmoot talk, which was also related to my MA dissertation. If people want to sort of have a session where I answer questions and dive deeper into it, I would love to do that. Let me know. Join. The easiest way if you're interested in that is to get on the Discord and let me know, and we can coordinate what would be a good time for everyone for that. Okay, this has been longer than normal. If people have questions or suggestions or anything that they'd like to say, here's your last chance to do so. I'm on a slight delay, so what I'm saying now was you're not going to hear for 30 seconds or more. So I'll give a bit of extra time if people have questions. Yes, this has been the extended edition, Maureen. You can sort of see what the delay is from whenever you typed extended edition to when I made a comment on it. But I did get this update in November. I'll try to do another one in December. I don't think that'll be a problem. It'll be after the 18th. I'm headed to the UK and Germany for a week. The UK for my graduation. But when I come back from that on the 18th, I will probably plan another live update, and I'll try to do a pre-recorded video before I go. I don't know if I'll get a chance to. Yeah, I guess extended edition of the Moot Talk. Yes. Sorry, Maureen, I didn't make the connection there. Yeah, so my Moot Talk was basically looking at measuring the stylistic differences between Tolkien's different works. So the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion sound different. People often describe them as being in a different style. And my master's dissertation and Oxonmoot Talk were about actually quantifying that. What sort of linguistic measures can you take to describe the differences between those works? Also, differences in style between different speakers. So how does Sam's speech differ from Frodo's? And one of the fun things I talked about in the both in the dissertation and the Oxonmoot Talk was how Frodo's language changes over time. He talks differently in book 1 to the way he talks in book 4, purely from the point of view of sort of linguistic features in his speech. So that's what I'll do, an extended edition talk on at some point, but I want it to be interactive. So I want to make sure I arrange a time that works for people, and we can do a Zoom call or something together where if people have questions and want me to go deeper in any particular thing, I can do that, which is obviously something I wasn't able to do at Oxonmoot, where I was quite rushed for time. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I want to thank you all for joining me, as always. This is a lot of fun. I'm excited to have this opportunity to share more of what's going on. One of the challenges with the Digital Tolkien Project is always there's so much going on that I can't just openly reveal. Like I can't publish on websites and so on, but I'm happy to talk about them here and give you sneak peeks and stuff like that. So thank you everyone for joining me live, and thank you to the people that are watching the recording. I will see you I won't see you. You'll see me in another video, possibly in the next week or two, a pre-recorded video, and then I'll do another live update towards the end of December. So thank you very much, everyone. And I'll see you again soon.